Hello and welcome to Dialogue with the World, Youth Voice on the Global South. I'm Tian Wei. A few thousand years ago, Confucius said, wherever you go, go with all your heart. Compared to his time, we can now see many more corners of the world and experience many more cultures on the road. While traveling, we're also thinking and sharing, being inspired and inspiring others. Yes, I know you all do, isn't it? Just like many of the young people we are going to meet today, they are literally from all over the world. They have traveled to China to see this country, meet the people, and also interact among themselves with the hope of going deeper into a discussion about our shared future, especially about the development of the Global South. And they are participating in China, the second round of Tsinghua Global Youth Dialogue, or TGYD. And they are now with us today. Let's welcome all of them onto the stage. From the UK, Harry Johnson, undergraduate student of international relations from University of Edinburgh. From the US, William McTeague, senior at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Sciences at Stanford University. From Nigeria, Amir Hashim, graduate from Beihang University. From China, Tang Leyan, master student of School of Journalism and Communication with Tsinghua University. From Argentina, Sebastian Urria, assistant professor of international relations with Catholic University of Argentina. And also from Singapore, Jai Zhihan, chairman of the Singapore-China Association Youth Chapter. Last but not least, from Saudi Arabia, Shumuk Al-Mubalad, Sustainable Development Ambassador from the King Abdullah University. Good to see all of you. And we have outstanding young people from all over the world that are now in China this year. Welcome to all of you as well. Thank you so much for all of you joining us. Now, before we start any conversation, I want to ask every one of you one question. Maybe it's like a survey. Do you think the voice of the young people have been heard or not yet? Let's vote. Altogether, 14. Thank you so much. So for those of you who did not raise your hand, you're suggesting the voice of the young people has not been heard yet. Yet. That's very important. So for those of you on the stage, raise your hand. Tell me more about why you think it's a yes.
From a technological standpoint, I think that there are many startups amongst young people. And at MIT, there's a lot of support. So I'm in a program where I got support for a startup, and I think that in that way, young people are being heard.
So that's William coming from the US talking about the new technologies. He thinks voice is being heard already.
That's correct.
All right. Who said not yet on the stage?
Yeah, I do. As an entrepreneur who have mingled with the government officials and I mingled with tech gurus, I realized that we have not been heard enough. As an AI startup founder, I can tell you we are not being heard enough, not yet, because this startup, as Tech William is talking about, it's guided by government policies. And still, we are yet to see enough young people into the policy decision making. For that reason, I don't think it has been heard well enough.
Good to hear different voices. Let's see if our opinion would change at the end of our conversation. But I'm so happy to have all of you here on the stage because I know you guys had a great time during the past 10 to 2 weeks traveling around China. Maybe you can help us to understand what kind of voice actually you want people to hear, and what do you think you need to hear, see, learn, discuss before you provide the society with the voice that you think is crucial. Harry?
So I think generally speaking what we've found during
Harry
our
from
travels,
the UK?
Generally, what we've seen during our travels, I went to Beijing, Shanghai, and then Zhejiang province. One of the things that stood out to me really was the amount of opportunities that have been provided to young people. For example, in Hangzhou, we visited a high school where so many of these students were so gifted at technology. Many of them had actually competed at the international level, competing in robotics and different tournaments. And I really think that more exposure to China beyond, practical developments and infrastructure is really, really valuable to us. I discovered that you can Wi-Fi food onto a high-speed rail. I think that's incredible. Why is that not in my country?
What did you order?
I didn't order because my phone was dead. But I really wanted to. It looked incredible.
Okay, right. And how is that important to you, do you think, in finding out answers related to what you want to discover?
Well, I think that there should be a greater level of nuance on China, for example. Coming from my perspective from the UK, but also I know my colleagues from the US and from abroad, it's quite challenging for us sometimes to engage with China beyond what's in the news cycle. I oftentimes find that a lot of stuff is to do with statistics, numbers, strategic information. But I think interacting with the youth, students from Tsinghua, and from further abroad has been so valuable to our experience.
Who else go to Hangzhou? Yeah. Okay, and who else? Only
Hangzhou?
Hangzhou, yeah.
Three of us.
Three of you, okay.
Yes. So my experience in Hangzhou was filled with a mix of emotions. There was one time where we went to the Yangtze River Delta Institute, and we watched as the lecturer went through a series of slides showing the different areas of research in biology. And I was shocked to see how advanced the research was. I mean, there were natural killer cell research, there was lipid nanoparticle research, even looking at traditional medicine and looking at the molecular basis for that type of medicine. And I was just intrigued by the quick development in the research, and I would love to perhaps collaborate with them in the future.
I really enjoy Hangzhou. I was with William at the Research Institute in Zhejiang, and I discovered that there is a huge amount of support that provided by the Chinese government and the Tsinghua Institute for young entrepreneurs across the whole world to come to China and set up companies. And as a young boy, I really love history. Along the way, we visited the Confucius birthplace, and I was so excited because I was able to meet the 76th grandson of Confucius. That was really, really a good moment for me. Yeah.
Wow, did you have a conversation?
Yo, we have a lot of conversation. He invited me to his house. I've been reading about Confucius, I think, since I was 17 years old. The way of life, the philosophy, how to take things easy in life, and I think that's helped me a lot in my journey as an entrepreneur.
The Confucius Institute, the Confucius Temple was wonderful, and I think what I learned was the value of relationships. I mean, relationships with each other, with spouses, relationships with teachers and government.
Yeah.
It's
in short,
wonderful.
the relationship of how to deal with people. Like,
Yes.
for example, someone like me, I always meet people from a different part of the world. The culture is different. So by learning Confucius school of thoughts, it helps me to relate with people easily.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I see the group of Hangzhou really got enriched by a brief trip over there. What about the others? Where else did you go to in China?
We go to Inner Mongolia. Yeah, I would say it is the first time that I went to Inner Mongolia, Ordos. And I think the people there were really nice. And they played some traditional music for us. For example, he played the horse head fiddle. And I got to know the culture of the grassland. And I got to know more about them. So on the bus back to our hotel, I remembered really clearly that everyone on the bus sang a song from their country. Yeah.
I think everybody went to Inner Mongolia will be overwhelmed by the music and the hospitality over there on the prairie. Which song did you sing?
I sang Beijing Welcomes You. Yeah, because our next stop is Beijing. Yeah.
The right song to sing.
Yeah.
我家大门常打开.
Yes.
Okay.
And we also teach the representatives how to sing this song, how to pronounce the Chinese.
Who went with you to Inner Mongolia?
I went with her to
So
Mongolia.
Sebastian now can sing the song.
No, I wasn't in her bus. We sang other songs.
So what was your experience like?
It was amazing. I went there and I was thinking all the time, surely I'm maybe the first Argentinian person to be here, because It's such a faraway place in China. China is on the other corner of the world from Buenos Aires. And we were at the desert, like a desert camp where we went to see a theater play of a traditional Mongolian wedding. And next to me sat 4 Argentinian dancers that were dancing there at that camp. And I couldn't believe that on the other corner of the world, I could still find people from my country with which to speak and to reflect on how it is our experience being from Argentina in such a far-flung country.
What a beautiful surprise, isn't
Yeah.
it? To see folks back from home.
Yeah, we're
over there.
everywhere.
Okay. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, yeah, and the food was amazing as well.
I'm sure that will be the first topic. Where else? You went to Hangzhou, Inner Mongolia, and?
Oh, we went to the southwest of China to beautiful Guizhou. This is my first time to the province, and from what I knew before, it's a landlocked in the mountains. But after I went there, it gave me a lot of new perspectives about the recent developments. I think Guizhou is beautiful in 3 parts. It's beautiful scenery. 70% of the province is mountainous. Also beautiful people, culturally very diverse. It's all 56 ethnic groups in China. And also recently, I think, especially in the Guianyu area, there's developments in terms of big data centers, infrastructure, and most importantly, thinking of how to revitalize the southwestern region of China in general. Very inspiring experience.
And you went to Guiyang alone?
I went to Guiyang as well as neighboring cities. Went on the bus to, I believe, Kaili. I went to ethnic Miao village to understand more about their culture as well as dance.
Right.
And also went to Qianxinan, whereby we experienced the football fever. Yes, and that was an amazing experience. And of course, enjoying the local food as the suan tang yu. But I thought it's not very much for me because I can't take spicy.
What a pity, but maybe next time.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that certainly is a great place to see the diversity of China.
Absolutely.
Right. And what about for you?
Yeah, for me, I went to Guizhou, and this is my first time here in China, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to explore such a diverse and beautiful country. One of the most memorable parts of my journey is my time in Guizhou. Let's say I'm coming from Saudi Arabia. The weather it's quite different from Saudi. And as a brand science student, person who loves nature, I enjoyed everything there. And I remember when we went to Guiyang, and we wear the costume, the tradition costume, and we went to do a fashion show, and the older ladies sang to us their tradition song. It was fantastic, yeah.
Well, that's a great experience. I'm sure you're going to catch up on the food area. Yeah. But just travel make us smarter, I think.
Yeah.
You know, when I even just travel 2 hours from the heart of Beijing, you see something quite different that you never imagined or ever, thought about. I really wondered, how is this specific experience of traveling to a very different city, interact with very different people, and sometimes you can't even speak their language, you could only just understand through their gestures and by observing. How is that, give you a different perspective or a new way of looking at things? Maybe let's start from someone who's been living in China for 10 years. Amir.
All right, thank you for the question. I really enjoyed it because actually I've been traveling around the world since I was less than a year old. We moved to the UAE since I was a baby, and I came to China for about 10 years now. So all the time, and in China I've been to like more than 20 cities in China. And all the time I'm excited to take my bag and go to another place just because I enjoy the journey or the feeling of discovering new things. And all the time we travel to another city in China. Sometimes even if to say you travel to like Hangzhou, I haven't been to Hangzhou for the last about a year. But when we go to Hangzhou again now, I feel like, wow, I'm discovering new things again. And this gives me a really, really good joy. And we discover a lot of nice people, a lot of good food, and the rest.
Well, I never would have thought I'd see my class in a company in China, because we went to a biotech facility, and we went into the first room. There was a guide who was giving us a tour, and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw a screen that had a video that I had seen in my biotech class last semester at MIT, and I thought, wow, I'm seeing this research in China, and I think it gave me a mutual level of respect for the scientific researchers here in China, just to see like the advancement of the technologies that they have here. It was a video of a machine that sorts cells individually. So based on the function of this cell, it can move it to one area versus another. And I was just amazed to see that the research I've been learning about at MIT was also being done here in China, and a lot of respect.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that they were at this level. So that's why I think I gained a lot of respect.
I really wonder, you know, as a young researcher, global citizen, I mean, traveling to a different country and seeing something different from what the news stories are describing, what was it like for you?
There's a lot of talk in the US about competition. And when I saw the kind of research that they were doing here, I viewed it in terms of collaboration. So it was eye-opening to gain a different perspective on that front. And I think there's a lot of room for researchers in the US and China to work on the same projects. There was this one scientist, we were talking about his research, and it was based on a technology that had been developed in the United States because scientists in the US had found that an algae produced a certain kind of molecule called DHA. And this molecule, DHA, is good for brain function and growth and development. And scientists in China had taken this molecule and found an algae in China that also produced the molecule. So now it's collaboration between the US and China because they are using that technology, and now they're working on producing it on a larger scale and less expensive. So I saw that as an example of this collaboration. And so I wasn't sharing as much, but I was listening, and that was amazing.
I think it's rewarding as well, not just for STEM students like yourself,
Yes.
but also for humanities students like myself, and like Sebastian, who's formerly also an IR major, like I am. Important for us to actually see on the ground that, you know, China has been leading Europe and America in areas like materials science for many years now. But to actually go to those labs and to provinces where they're really like, you know, cutting edge technology that's being developed there, it's really important for us to see firsthand. Like the entire like purpose of our presence in China now, the Tsinghua Summer Fellowship and also the Tsinghua Global Youth Dialogue, is to promote nuance, right? In contested times like this, it's more important than ever for us to interact. And even though we may be competing between ourselves and between different industries, it's important for us to understand that at the personal level and not the statistical level.
It's not just black and white, right? There's so much nuance over there.
Absolutely.
And there's so much space that we can explore together. Sebastian, since your name is being called upon already by your peers.
It seems so, yes.
Sorry.
Harry mentioned me because I studied international relations just as him. And I'm a teacher as well at the Catholic University of Argentina. And for me, it's a bit different coming from Argentina, from Latin America, seeing China not from that lens, the lens of, let's say, a more central lens about competition or collaboration. For me, it was more of a discovering the whole other part of the world that I didn't know firsthand, but that somehow I had known, mainly through my mother, for instance, that she's a history and geography teacher at the high school level. And ever since I was small, she would tell me about the stories about the Yangtze River or the Great Wall or the emperors in the Forbidden City, as well as my grandmother, who is also a Chinese enthusiast. But they never got to see, until now, China. And I'm the first one in my family who's come here. And in that sense, getting to see all of that rich history and all those places that were in my mind for so many years, just leaving them and walking through the alleys of the Forbidden City and the streets of Beijing, that has been amazing for me. And I hope that everyone can get a chance to experience China firsthand.
You know, the reason why we talk about our travel experiences is because it opens windows for us. There are windows that we never know it existed. And now we saw them, and we can also open them. I really wonder what kind of window opens for you, Zizhi, during your trip in China.
Oh, me. Windows opening me for China. So a lot of what I do in my official as well as career perspective is bringing together China and Southeast Asia. And then especially since the implementation of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, as well as the ASEAN-China Free Trade Area, there's a lot of legislative provisions to actually enhance trade and investment between these regions. And this time, since we're in Guizhou, is actually a very important transportation as well as a hub between the two regions, especially considering the advent of the Atlantic corridor. So my time there, we actually went to the Gui'an new area, whereby it is one of the, I think, 17 new areas in China, where they try to focus on high-end technology. And I believe there's a lot of synergies in the future in terms of bringing many of these Chinese companies abroad in terms of internationalization, as well as seeing how these two regions can collaborate with each other, especially considering that Southeast Asia is industrializing rapidly and there's a lot of need for such technologies.
I think one of the more interesting points that William and I were discussing in Zhejiang was how so much basic research that has been done outside of China now has been developed at the second stage.
Yes.
Right? So we were actually comparing notes on an Economist article that I shared with William. And in that article, as I referenced earlier, China has led Europe and America in a number of key scientific sectors: material science, electric vehicles, all of the above. But what William pointed out to me is that a lot of this research was done several years ago outside of China, but is now being furthered and developed in China. And it would be very interesting to see more collaboration on that front, given that there are now more heavy restrictions on certain chips and AI development from the US. So I was wondering what you have to add on that.
Exactly. I mean, I've seen that.
The table is being turned to William now.
Well, specifically, basic science research is strong in the United States, and applied research is strong in China. So one example of this is Tesla. We visited Tesla in Shanghai, and we saw how Tesla was developed in the United States, and when it went overseas, it began to be manufactured at a much faster pace, to where they're now manufacturing a Tesla car every 37 seconds. So that's one example of how a technology that was developed in the US is now being expedited in its manufacturing in China, and I see that as one potential source of collaboration.
Very interesting. Zihan, you're from Singapore.
Oh, yes.
Singapore is working on Smart Singapore for the year 2025, if I remember
Indeed,
right.
we are.
So how you are seeing the technology developing here, and also, in Asia, these interactions?
There's actually a lot of symbiosis, no matter is it between Singapore and the world, more specifically Singapore and China. As last statistics I checked, Singapore is the largest source of direct FDI inbound to China, and also the largest recipient of FDI inbound to Southeast Asia. Around 70% of all investments into ASEAN goes through Singapore. And a lot of it is actually in this kind of a cutting-edge research and technology due to the, more established financial as well as legal provisions that Singapore has. So I think a lot of what our friends mentioned earlier is actually a very prudent and very relevant to what we are seeing, especially between China and its immediate region, whereby China does take the lead in a number of strategic areas such as battery technology, EVs, as well as solar energy. But in terms of the actual manufacturing as well as implementation, there are other countries whereby there's a more direct need because local conditions has not reached a stage whereby they can do this kind of R&D themselves. So in terms of collaboration, especially between industry, academia, as well as the capital markets, if you may, there needs to be a greater synergy. Otherwise, a lot of these cutting-edge research, it stays in the universities. It doesn't actually create greater value for society. Now, that's a lot of what I personally focus on, bringing all the good stuff that you guys do in so that more of us can enjoy it.
You can tell Zihan works for companies that are going to the stock market.
Hopefully.
I see the value of interactions among yourselves also throughout the trip, especially crucial. For example, Amir, you originally come from Africa, but your family has been doing business in China, and as a result, you've been living in China for years. So compared to others, you know China a bit better, or much better.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Le Yan, I know you are producing movies, documentaries, talking about cultural differences and similarities. So meanwhile, we have Shomuk has been studying plant science. She's trying to promote the idea of science in her own country, Saudi Arabia, and compare what are some of the geographical similarities, for example, between China and other countries and her home country. And as a result, be able to bring out more inspirations for future development in her research. So I think these are all beautiful examples of how interactions actually among yourselves and traveling to different places can actually open more windows for us. These people are very talkative. Make sure you three talk as well. That's what I'm trying to do here.
Yes.
So Le Yan, tell me more about the documentary you made recently and why it touched you so that it became a topic for your production.
The recent documentary, I would say it is about the whole recording of our deep dive. Because I'm the director of communication department of Tsinghua Global Youth Dialogue. So we just want to make a video that shows everyone what they have done or what they have seen through the whole deep dive. So me and my colleagues, we have 6 students, and we use our camera to record everyone's impressions, to record their trip through the 3 cities. And I think that kind of documentary really gave me a lot of inspirations because as a Chinese, I went to a lot of cities before, but it is my first time to travel with people from different countries, so many people. So I think this kind of experience really gave me a lot of new insights of the world of our cooperation. Also, we invited a lot of representatives from different countries to join us for the video shooting. And I was really deeply moved by their cooperation because if they do not participate us, we can't make such a beautiful documentary by ourselves.
Whose story impressed you the most? Which story?
I think there are too much story, but I met a representative from maybe Africa, and he told me that he just bought the camera the day before yesterday. He came to a day ago before he came to China. Yeah, so I think that is really a kind of story that amazed me because I think, oh my God, he would like to buy a camera before he came to China, and he just used the camera to take pictures for everyone.
He wanted to capture everything new he saw,
everything.
right?
Yeah. And every time he met new people, he would say that, oh, I bought a new camera because I'm really excited. And this is my first time to China. I want to use the camera to capture all the moments.
Wow.
Yeah.
To provide his service as well.
Yeah, and I remembered really clearly in the desert, in the Ordos desert, he took a lot of photos for me. And he just joked that I would pay 100 yuan each for him so that he could send the photos to me. But after we back to the hotel, he sent all the photos to me. And I would say those photos were fabulous. Yeah.
I'm sure in retrospect, you know, a few years from now, 10 years or even 15 years from now, looking at those photos, there's something going to be much more than what you have just remembered. Yeah. So Amir, what about for you?
Well, to add with Sebastian and Harry just mentioned about the importance of having dialogue, is that with some of the participants of this event, we visit the Great Wall. So with William is there too. So along the way, after climbing the wall and everything, we came down and then we tried to have food and we went to a pizza shop. So for someone who lived in China for a very long time, there are some things that they are no longer like shocking or surprising to me. So we tried to pay my dad, and then one of the guys he was saying hello, 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 and the waiter doesn't like hear. And I told him, like, no, in China you say fu yuan. That is when she will come down. And then I realized, and then we go in deeper, discussing about little cultural differences, such as the driver, we don't call him driver, we call him shufu. The cleaners, we don't call them cleaners, we call them IE. And they were like so amazed that, wow, there is so much respect in China and there is so much respect in Chinese culture. But for someone like me who like stay here for a long time, I didn't think it's something. So I think this kind of event is really important. And I see like the Chinese government is really working hard to improve that, such as the 144 hours transit-free visa. I think that is a very, very good thing. I know like there is a famous video, City Bu City, that went so viral because of the visa thing. So I think cultural exchange is very important. Having the dialogue is very important. From a different angle, people will be seeing something else, such as Harry mentioned that so many times. Oh, I don't know in China it's like this. Oh, I've never been in China like this. Oh, so many times. William too, everyone too like that.
You remind me of something. I want to ask you guys, this is your first time in China as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you feel culture shock?
No.
You got here?
Yeah. No.
No?
No?
I didn't
felt
feel
like
it
it's
either.
home, yeah.
Like people kept telling me before I came here, watch out, you'll feel culture shock. You'll be like shocked to be in the other corner of the world, another civilization, millions of people that don't speak a language. And it felt so natural to me. Like, I think people are very welcoming.
Yeah, very welcoming.
Yeah, that one more thing like that Sebastian just mentioned right now is that one of the participants, actually, I'm sorry, I keep on telling you guys stories about the other participants. I've been here so long, so some of the things that are cultural, like they call it cultural shock or something, is no longer cultural shock to me. Is that he was so worried about what to eat, you know, and he was like so worried about how to relate with the Chinese, how to go out. And he said, wow, in Hangzhou, everyone was so nice. He even got lost in the night we went out, like he got lost in the West Lake. And then he said that it was very, very easy for him to relate with the Chinese. He never expected them to be like so open to tell them and everything. I said, well, if you know how to speak Chinese, it will be much more easier than that. Yeah.
Interesting. I love that story. I'm fascinated by the fact that all of you are well discussing, trying to find out what you actually have discovered. But you know, having said that though, it's not just about China. It's also about you. For example, about ecological civilization, about environmental protection. Xiaomu, I know you are working a lot on that in your own country.
Yeah.
Are you discovering similarities or differences about how China is perceived with those topics?
Let's say in this, I would say in this dialogue, because I didn't find a lot in when I go to Guizhou. I have a project called Around Us. It's about upcycling and turning waste into art. I found a lot of people there, and I interviewed them to show me their perspective about this topic. They show me how they reuse the materials, such as one from Uganda. She said to me, they use the straws and then turning them to necklaces and something else. So it was like, wow, huge thing. Yeah, I found a lot of people work on this topic.
There are so many discussions about the world, but at the same time about Global South. Even our topic today is a voice from the Global South. Some of you are coming from emerging and developing countries. Others are from developed economies. But I know now the world is much more complicated, much more sophisticated than just developed versus developing or emerging. So tell us more about how do you see the conversations evolving about what you have discovered along this trip about China, which regards itself as a member of the Global South, and also how do you see what is happening in your country, you know, with regard to the question of Global South? Harry, can I begin with you?
Well, I think most people who were at the initial Tsinghua Summer Fellowship meeting remember that the first word that was mentioned was nuance, right? And the goal of us coming to China was to interact with Chinese culture, but also our international partners to actually understand China and the Global South to a much better degree. If we are to interact with our Chinese counterparts, whether that's in China or outside of China, or even with other Global South counterparts, it is important for us to have a first-hand experience with their culture, and they understand our culture. So I think, you know, meeting Sebastian, for example, we have almost no coverage of Latin America in my faculty, unfortunately. there's only about 3 or 4 classes that actually discuss Latin America in depth. And having conversations with Sebastian, whether that's in sessions or outside of sessions, or with Amir about business in China from the perspective of an African businessman who has now worked in China as a Nigerian man, it's super interesting to get that level of nuance.
What kind of nuance exactly?
It's hard to say, but I mean, like, you know, discussing the differences in conducting business in...
I mean, you yourself has been rich in living in another culture. You lived in Zambia for 4 years, in Africa.
I did.
So I'm sure you had already an earlier age peek into what they call the Global South.
I think one thing that definitely stands out is that the label of the Global South is quite a challenging label in the first place because, you know, it's very difficult to directly compare China and Zambia, for example. China has been Zambia's principal trading partner for around 15 years, and China has become increasingly relevant in Zambian affairs. However, you know, discussing the Global South with my colleagues like this, discussing the differences in conducting business in China, in Nigeria, in the UK, in Argentina, or even our governmental affairs, right? We were talking about the different electoral systems earlier. And, you know, I had no idea that Nigeria was a federal democracy, for example. These things are so useful for me to bring back to my institution and to share, whether that's in an academic paper or in a discussion like this.
Do you see people are just having curiosity, or do you see Global South, quote unquote, is coming onto the world stage as a very important force, and why so?
I think as a very, very important role partner to the world, Africa is a key role, especially when we are trying to reach green energy or renewable energy. We have the abundance of raw materials, such as me. I deal with the raw materials just because I think it's something that is very, very important for our future. So for that reason, they think that it's important that we also bring Africa to the table and discuss all this issue. And it's not just because of curiosity, it's because Africa is very important to the world. Yeah.
To add on to that as well, I completely agree with what Amir is saying. But one of the things that we mentioned, I raised my hand at the beginning, right? And I said that global youth had been heard. But I would caveat that by saying that that needs to be acted upon. Just because youth voices are being heard doesn't mean that their words are being acted upon.
Yeah.
There is great demand for things, for example, like greater representation of emerging powers, emerging economies on the global stage. One of the things that Amir and I have discussed several times is, does Africa deserve a seat on the Security Council? Absolutely it does.
Yeah,
and there needs to be greater representation of emerging economies in several different positions in the world.
Oh, very much concur about what Amir mentioned, because I think you know, terms like Global South or even Africa or you know, or Asia, these are very, very wide encompassing concepts, right? So instead of, I mean, of course there are similarities in terms of developmental stages, but it is more useful to consider, you know, every individual country or every individual culture within the country on the separate terms. I mean, I primarily reside as well as work in Southeast Asia. These are 10 countries with many different peoples and different faiths. So I think realistically, how the South can work with each other as well as collectively, you know, with more advanced economies, is bearing in mind that, you know, first thing is putting down, you know, what previous centuries has happened. I mean, that is behind us. But of course, you know, as a new generation, it's important to remember that the priority in terms of development is really making sure that the livelihoods of people, that we see a substantial increase in our lifetimes, right? Because a lot of things that we mentioned, be it in terms of education, poverty alleviation, or improving even sustainability, all of this unfortunately requires money, right? So if we cannot guarantee, you know, the more advanced standards of living as well as economic development, a lot of these dreams and aspirations of young people, as well as the dreams of letting young people be heard, this will be but a pipe dream. So I very much look forward, you know, working with entrepreneurs like yourself and seeing, you know, how we can attract investors to make your business even bigger.
Sure.
Sebastian.
Yeah, of course. I believe that in general, developing countries and the periphery of the global order have always been contributing to international relations and to the global debate. Only that in lesser ways, right? And that, for instance, I teach a course in university where we study how international order is not just built by great powers, but also countries like Argentina or countries from Africa or from Southeast Asia can contribute and have contributed, actually, in many ways, both legitimizing the order and also contesting it. And I believe that right now, as our countries are developing, or we hope that they are developing, because these are hard times to develop. I hope that we can shift to a more constructive role, where we're just not saying this is wrong, this order should be fairer, these institutions should change, but also proposing new ways, new ways to deal in this century. Because I think that, in general, what we have done so far has been reforms, but we need to do something like this, right? To talk between us, to see what's the next step. And I believe that the world is opening up to that sort of debate between all parts, but there's much work to be done.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with moving on to concrete steps, from going from a dialogue to actions that we can take.
What kind of action would you take, given your capabilities and given what you have learned?
Well, one action that personally I would be interested in taking is setting up a pipeline from undergraduates or graduates at MIT to get a research experience at a company such as the one we visited in Zhejiang. And I think that's one example of creating some cultural exchange. That way we can understand the countries in the global south. And I think a lot of other students at MIT would also be interested in coming to MIT for some research experience. And currently, there's a block on that pipeline. And so I think figuring out where the blockage is and maybe creating those collaborations is necessary.
Where is it?
Where is this block? Well, I mean, it stems out of a trust issue, but from what I understand, China has a certain classification in MIT's standpoint to where they're not able to allow students to have internships at a certain country if they're classified in that way. So working on how we can send students to China for those internships.
So push for policy changes.
Yes, it goes to policy changes, either at MIT's level or at the state or federal level. Yes.
Any other inspirations?
Oh, yes. I think in addition to business cooperation or technology cooperation, just from my major and my interest, I think nowadays there are more and more cooperation related to culture. For example, American film shooting crews would like to cooperate with China shooting crews because talking to film in the previous time, people would love to watch Hollywood movies. But I think the youth in China or in all the other countries would like to think about how could we promote our movies in our country.
Or how would you have better access to others? I guess it's not just one direction, right?
Yeah.
Action is even more important, whether it's about scientific cooperation or whether it's about learning about each other's culture. It's always the two-way traffic, if not multiple ways of traffic. It's not just one direction. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Please,
And I think, that also comes, events such as the Tsinghua Global Youth Dialogue. I think this initiative, is excellent, as well as it provides something else that a lot of these cultural exchange programs, I mean, I'm sure all of us have attended a lot of them, doesn't provide, is that there's follow-up, after the event. Right, because I think a lot of these, trips, to different countries, sure, you get to make friends, go to nice attractions, enjoy good food, shake hands, take pictures. But, after that, there isn't much, you can follow up on, and that's a pity. So I think, what William mentioned, what Leia mentioned, be it in terms of going for internships, as well as, having projects related to the countries I visited, it actually provides a consolidated as well as actual approach to continue engaging with the peoples and communities that you have visited, so that it would not just, you're not just coming as a tourist, to see all the attractions and have a superficial level understanding, but only, after gaining this perspective and actually immersing yourself in the ecosystem, can you truly claim, yes, I have came and I've seen, and well, maybe not conquered, but, I've enjoyed, being here.
Right, or at least contributed to the environment in which you're living.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That's very crucial, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Because some of us might travel back home, and the stories that you heard and you watched here might not necessarily easily get across to those who have not been here or who have had their own perceptions about certain things and not easy to change. So what I think is happening here is certainly very cordial and camaraderie, because we were on the same trip.
Yeah.
We were there together, and we are still here together. But for those of you who need to travel back home, and maybe tell your friends or family and colleagues about what you saw here, might not be that easy for them to digest.
Yeah.
So here comes the question, right? Do you try? Or do you say, let's just forget about it? You know, let's just go on with what I used to have and
Do we try and like
have
communicate
easy
that?
conversations, not challenging ones?
I think you always have to try. I think that it's important for us being students to go beyond that and to try to distill something more important about Chinese culture and Chinese history, and like not just say there were a lot of people, a lot of industry to
Seeing is believing, yeah?
yeah, to be able to have, as you said, some more difficult conversations and go beyond just tourism and say, no, I learned that Chinese people behave this way, they think this way, they have these beliefs, and maybe sharing that with people that don't yet understand that, I think that's a good way to make something useful about the trip afterwards.
Yes, and I think showing is often a lot more effective than merely telling. So in making videos about showing the different cultures, I think it's very helpful. Yes.
Harry,
So
what
again-
if there are difficult conversations?
Well, I mean, there's certainly difficult conversations to be had because, you know, UK-China relations aren't necessarily glowing at the moment, right? That's no secret. But what I would certainly say is that before I came to China, I had a certain understanding of China being quite an inaccessible, difficult place to go, whether you're a tourist or whether you're on an organized group of people like we are lucky to be on, right? One of the things that I struggled with initially was actually getting, you know, my Chinese applications to work or my payment systems to work. I actually still can't access WeChat after being here for two weeks. I still can't access WeChat. But having these conversations and understanding, you know, how can China open up further, or what steps do we have to take in our home countries to open up more to China, to promote more cultural exchange, more youth exchange, more economic exchange? That's the conversations that I want to have.
Well, China is one of the largest economies in the global south, Sebastian. But how is that this experience and also interactions among you be able to bring you more inspirations about exactly what global south could mean, might mean, and also can contribute? Since you're a political science major, I think it's a right question to throw it to you.
Yeah, a hard question though, but a good question. I think that China, as you've said before, I think it's already crossed let's say the line of development. I think it is very developed right now, although I understand that you're seeing as you're still developing, at least from a position of a developing country, you can really see the difference, right? All the huge infrastructure, the high technology, and I think that looking at China's history, there are a lot of lessons to take about how China managed to open up and to really, I think, take from the world, take lessons, take technology, and take ideas about how to develop, but also, let's say, matching those ideas and those technologies with their own culture and their own history. I think that it gives an example, as do other nations in Southeast Asia, for instance, Singapore, about how can we develop our nations, not necessarily following set rules and set, let's say, recipes for development, but actually figuring out a local way of development. And I think what China, as well as other countries in Asia, offer is a kind of beacon to say they could do it, they were successful. And in that way, I think that we have to also think how we can be developed in our own ways.
And this conversation is not just about China, because we are talking about the global south. You know, one of the things is whether, you know, many of the players in the global south, they're, as you said, Sebastian, trying to come up with their own version of how to develop, how can they interact with others, how can, out of their own circumstances, find the best way forward. Of course, as a result of that, you see China has these grand schemes of so-called three initiatives, right? Global Development Initiative, Global Civilization Initiative, Global Security Initiative, and there are many other things. But when they are being translated, you know, to people, average folks on the street, and just ordinary guys, you know, in our life, northern people's lives, how do you see it is evolving? You know, on the one hand, huge aspirations. On the other hand, feet on the ground. You know, the people you meet,
Yeah.
the little restaurant you went to visit,
It's
the song that the people in Kaili sang to you, the excitement when they kick the ball into the court, into the net, in soccer, right? In Kaili.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or in Hangzhou, along the West Lake. And in Inner Mongolia, when they were playing the Mongolian fiddles, when they were singing as part of welcoming their guests because they want to promote tourism in their localities. So on the one hand, you see these grand political schemes and also slogans and aspirations. Also, you see people on the ground, what they are doing. I mean, how much is that interesting combination bring us more thoughts about the Global South and where the Global South, including everyone living in those countries and economies, are heading for?
Very big question. And from a personal experience, I mean, I suppose all of us here, you know, we are all normal in our own ways. And of course, I think every country out there has own, you know, macro, you know, strategic objectives that folks in the capital as well as think tanks wreck their heads over. But, you know, as from a day-to-day perspective, you know, it is quite unlikely that we bear, you know, this kind of ideologies or, you know, strategies, you know, in our minds every day. Except, you know, if you're a political science or, you know, international relations major, but that's relevant to your job. So I think ultimately, when it boils down to how we lead our lives, I think as long as all these aspirations, you know, all these guidelines, all these fanciful forums and conferences, how does it, you know, the results of it, how does it objectively increase, you know, getting better paying jobs, being able to enjoy life, getting access to a better information, a more quality entertainment, improving, you know, getting to know about the world around us. And also I think health, you know, leading a more healthy, as well as a longer life whereby we can enjoy with our families. And ultimately, you know, that's for the common man, this is what matters. So as long, you know, this kind of political objectives, it helps to achieve this, you know, aspirations, I think it is a good policy.
What matters are the lives of the Rotary people. That's
yes.
what you're trying to say.
Of course.
Exactly. I think in our audience, among our audience, there are much smarter minds than mine. Why don't we open the floor to them, and then we have, after that, some brief response from the panelists on the stage, and then we wrap it up.
My question is for William. So, do you think like youth are heard in the technology innovation area or not? Thank you.
So we talked with scientists, experts in the field, about this gene therapy to see if they thought it would work. And they told us, okay, it's a great idea, but actually this other cell type might be best. So like we had made a gene therapy for one cell type, and they suggested on another cell type. So I think early collaboration with expert scientists in the field is one of the biggest roadblocks in company startups.
I have a question for Shmook. What unique role do you think the young generation can play in addressing climate change and promoting sustainable development?
Let's say, as the Sustainable Development Ambassador, and I work in promoting the recycling topic, I feel spreading awareness among a young generation, it's important, and if you are dictated to something, you must make it work.
I have a question for Harry. May I ask you, as a youth leader, can you suggest some more way to balance personal life and work to the youth? Thank you.
Just to answer your question, I'll keep it short, don't worry. First, and one of the most important things that you can do, whether you're involved at the highest levels of youth organizations or whether you're a grassroots supporter, is to also involve yourself in things outside of academia. I'm very lucky to go to a university that is one of the largest in the UK for sport, so I'm very actively involved in sport on the side, alongside my studies, alongside things like this. And these kinds of opportunities, whether you're competitive or not, whether you're a casual member, these things can really bring out new opportunities for you. Now I'm actually lucky enough to get qualified as a coach in the next few months. So these opportunities really open new doors for you, whether you expect it or not.
My question is for Amir. I would like to ask you, how do you think how China's growth strategy can influence and can have a good impact on those countries who are still developing? Thank you so much.
Actually, China is playing a very, very important role in development of the Global South. And it provides a lot of initiatives. We have, like she mentioned earlier, we have Belt and Road, we have global initiatives, all these kind of initiatives. And we have a lot of think tanks. So the main thing I think Chinese can do to change the perspective or to improve the strategy is that, one, we have to start with education. I think in terms of dealing with the Global South, there is a lot of different narratives about how Global South looks, especially, for example, like Africa or like India. We have passed the era of where they are like really, really, really that bad. No, it's no longer like that. I think there is need for more education to the public of how these places look like. I personally, as I mentioned earlier, I provide orientation for people who are going to do business in the Global South. And I have been seeing like a lot of changes recently, like as we mentioned, Harry mentioned in Hangzhou, we have seen like a kid walking up to Harry and asking him questions. And this is part of the changes we are seeing in education. And we are also seeing people asking me and Harry in Zhejiang, Wuzheng, that me and Harry, Africa and Europe, to take a picture with him. So this is also part of the things that they are doing, and to also bring everyone on the table. One thing we enjoy doing business with Chinese is that they don't interfere. They allow everyone to do the way they see fit.
My question to Amir, what do you think can be done to promote domestic tourism in most African countries, especially in the East, West, and South? We also ask some more partnerships in research. The partnership between Africa and China research. Maybe we have very many universities that you can partner with in biotechnology, among other sustainable development-related issues. Thank you.
Well, Africa, I think we have a lot of progress. Looking back about 10 years ago, right now we have a lot of Africans who are trying to go other part of the world, to other part of Africa to see how it looks like. I'm from Nigeria, and if you go to any part of Africa, you see a Nigerian. You can see people traveling to Zanzibar. Like I was talking with one of the participants that they want to visit Zanzibar to see, not only in Africa, but also across the world. So one of the things we can do is that we can also encourage this kind of event. You yourself can organize. We can encourage this kind of events to happen. We can promote exchange. We can promote like student exchange from China or from any part of Africa to any other countries within the African continent.
I can see the participants from Africa are really having an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, that will bring money.
All right. It has been quite an enriching conversation we are having here. Before we wrap up today's conversation, I think we go back to the earlier promise of re-examining the question we raised at the very beginning of this conversation. That is, do you think the youth voice has been heard today? Especially when we're talking about the youth voice on the Global South. All right, so let's vote on that.
Higher than that, guys, higher than that. Raise your hands higher than that.
Altogether, 20 hands raised up.
Is that 6 minds changed?
Yes, 6 minds have changed. Yay! So thank you so much for all of your contributions, and congratulations to what you have learned through your trip this time, and hopefully in future trips around the world. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been watching our show, Youth Voice on Global South. We want to thank the 3 co-organizers, CGTN, TGYD, and International Cooperation Center. Thank you so much for being with us. Goodbye.